Okay, this is the second IIIT program for a writing research proposal. I think the first one was on 22nd and 23rd. So I would like to firstly record my appreciation to the organizer for being able to organize this, and thank you for inviting me also to basically exchange views on how best we can improve our knowledge and understanding of the theme that we are focusing on. I don't need to put this, as you know already, but I just want to bring myself particularly back to the workshop's stated objectives so that I will not be too far away from what is supposed to be communicated to the participants with regard to the desire of the organizer. So you can check back this, but basically in essence we are together trying to see how we can exchange views on developing research proposal, particularly in terms of identifying the topic. Yeah, and this is very broad area, and many speakers have contributed. Some of them have contributed their part in trying to give the holistic view, firstly, and secondly, some presenters might have been very detailed and focused to certain areas. Yeah? But all in all, I guess being exposed to all those presentations, the participants should be able to infer, grab, and internalize some of this. Now, the original topic given to me is how to choose a topic and prepare a good research proposal for topics on integration of knowledge for a master or PhD thesis in the field of human sciences, sociology, psychology, communication. This is very broad. I am not in all those areas other than sociology. The rest, even in sociology also, I am very inclined to certain inclination. Therefore, I will just design this in such a way that I will be talking on the topic that I have modified, choosing a topic for social science research with integration of knowledge framework, some considerations and examples. So I will try to be very fast because I have about 70 or so slides. So therefore, I only will have this objective in mind. I will provide a very broad guideline or guidance. I think there is a difference between guidelines and guidance. I think guidance is broader than guidelines. So even guidelines also, I don't give you really, but maybe some of what I will touch may be considered as guidelines, but generally guidance for researchers towards developing, not giving you topic, but there will be some suggestions at the end. Developing a reasonable topic for your research proposal, postgraduate research proposal in the field of human sciences with integration of knowledge framework. So there are a few key concepts at this stage that need to be considered. The three things that will characterize this presentation. Number one, it is a broad guide, so don't expect very specific thing to come out from my presentation. Number two, I also need to take into account the integration of knowledge concept in trying to give you this guidance. And then the more focused one would be in the area or in the field of human science or social science. Now, so therefore, I have this outline prepared basically just to guide us. I number it as 1, 2, and 3. You can further number it as 1A, 1B, 1C if you like. Here I don't do that. So basically, we have these three topics to be focused on. One is introduction, and then choosing a topic for research in social sciences, and finally, maybe this is what perhaps is more relevant to this, examples of theme and topic in sociology and anthropology. So for number one, introduction, I simply want to give some remarks on key concepts. The first key concept is on research. Many ideas, many things have been touched by other earlier presenters, but I just want to reiterate some of this. Research is basically a systematic and organized way of knowing things. It involves a process that has stages, technical steps, and procedures, and so on. I think you have been informed of all these things. It has its own purpose and limitations. Research is of different types. Research is a powerful and enjoyable way for. There are three major, I think, broad, what you call it, functions of this. One is we want either to generate or create or develop knowledge. So there is one thing through research. Research also is to evaluate the current knowledge, could be that. And research is meant for improving, enhancing, and enriching. So our knowledge might be contributing either in one of these or some of this. Yeah? Knowledge of research, I mean, our own knowledge about research of research varies. Some have very deep and very, what you call is, well-versed in each and every aspect of research, but some are not. But they are still within the orientation of doing research. That's why we have, let's say, final year project for bachelor degree. It's also research, but it has a lower expectation because of the level of knowledge of research that they have. Yeah, and research is both science and arts. What I want to highlight here is that research has its own foundations. These foundations dictate its methodology of knowledge, and also the orientation of that knowledge. So therefore, choice of a topic should take into account all this. So that is number one, some remarks. Remark number two is on the integration of knowledge framework. Much has been said about this, and many writers, scholars, speakers have talked about this, have touched on this, using their own way, perspectives, and so on. But I just want to focus here that basically when we talk about Islamic framework, and here Islamic framework of knowledge, which we call integration of knowledge framework, it must be rooted in Islamic ideology. Of course, when we say Islamic ideology, particularly Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology. And this will in turn influence its methodology and orientation. So I will use other term later, that is the foundation of knowledge. I define foundation of knowledge to be these terms later on. So in Islamic context or from Islamic perspective, Islam recognizes all legitimate sources of knowledge. And Islam gives due consideration to both categories of sources. Because when we talk about sources, maybe one way of dividing the sources or categorizing the sources would be sources that are divinely based or divinely inspired or rooted or grounded. And another way is to also look at the other that is human. At any rate, when we talk about the framework, it aims at producing an organically coherent body of knowledge. It is integrated, it is useful in the respective area. And the area that we are talking about is social science. So in short, a research topic should reflect the IOK framework of features in the above sense. Now, the big question would be, how can this be done? I think this is not an easy way to do it, but I think the broad idea must be there, because unless we are moved by that particular idea of integration of knowledge, we may not be able to even consider that. That is why I need to also touch on this second key concept. And the third key concept of course, human science. Now I'm using human sciences here as a term and not as a branches of social science. Therefore, I use a singular form of expression. Human sciences is more popularly known as social science, of course, in many places. So we are not going to debate on this. It is generally concerned with the human and things, and both individual and collective. And therefore, there are so many disciplines which are or which have been developed to understand the various aspects of human, either human as an individual or human in the collective sense. Yeah? So that's why we have political science, psychology, anthropology, sociology, and so on. They are basically different from natural science. I think we don't need to emphasize on this. Then what I highlight here is that, therefore, if we are to develop a topic for social science, the topic must be must have something to do with human, with man, with society, and only then we can talk about that topic has the element of social science. Either it is what you call it, too broad or too narrow, that will be later on determined by the process of narrowing down into something that is researchable. Yeah? Right. So we have to talk about that in that sense. So now, let me choose, or let me go to the second, what you call this, heading in my presentation outline, choosing a topic for research in social sciences with Islamic framework. So I will take a little bit of time more to deliberate further on Islamization, integration of knowledge framework. Yeah. Now, since different people explain it differently, so this is my way of explaining it. Basically, you can take in that way. So as I said, people have different way of doing it. Therefore, I would like to explain this in my own way. But I bring your attention to the last point here, is that when we say integration of knowledge framework, so the two elements here, number one is Islam, number two is knowledge. Yeah. So these two must be there when we imagine a framework. What is a framework then? So we can imagine or start by having a very simple imagination or analogy. A structure, any structure of a building, structure of a tree, structure of human body or anatomy, and so on. So all these objects, they have structure, if you want to imagine that in that way. Yeah? So let us look at the framework as having structure. Yeah. So, but the structure of Islamic or integrated knowledge framework must be grounded in Islam or in Islamic teaching. So the broader structure that we have as far as Islamic system, Islamic religion is concerned is this. Yeah? When we know that it is based on the hadith, when the Prophet was attended by Jibril in order to teach the Prophet religion by question and answer thing. Yeah? And then we are informed of the hadith, where from there scholars develop this very, very basic structure, but very, very important structure. Yeah. So in other words, Islamic system has the elements of Iman and Amal and also Ihsan. Yeah? Right. So when we talk about integrated thing, this must be seen in this way. Iman, in terms of detailed discussion might have its own aspects to be discussed, but it cannot be discussed in isolation from amal or from Islam in that sense. And there are also aspects of Islam or aspect of amal which should be explained in detail independently because it has its own character. But it cannot also be understood in isolation from iman and ihsan. So therefore, at the end, we can see the area where all meets there. Yeah. So I just take from Google here. All in all, if we expand that, then this is what normally comes out sometimes, or not to say sometimes. This is one way of explaining it, where the Quran and the source and the Prophet Muhammad are saying, for example, as another source, and the description about Islam here in general. Yeah. So this one can be different expression. Now, so if that is the case, if that is the basic structure of Islamic system upon which we want to develop integration of knowledge framework, we can do a number of possible. I mean, we have several options. Number one is expanding by expanding that basic structure into layers and layers and layers of smaller details until we can see the connection between what we do and ultimately it goes up to that basic structure. That is one way of doing it. And this can be seen, for example, even the disciplines that have developed out of this basic structure. For example, here, Sufism is as a discipline that has developed out of that teaching on or about ihsan. Iman also, we know that there have been many disciplines out of this, not only Usuluddin in the that sense, but also like even philosophy also. Yeah. And the component of Islam or amal has given rise to a number of other sciences, particularly fiqh and usul fiqh. So you can see how the basic structure of Islam has been further expanded in history in order to that later on could see the emergence of the various sciences originated from divine revelation here, right? And if you expand further, which of course we are not doing it here, just want to show the logic for that. Now, the second way of developing that integration of knowledge structure is by redesigning that structure, taking into account knowledge and Islamic worldview. Yeah, knowledge and Islamic worldview, while keeping also in mind that basic structure of Islam. Why we need to keep that basic structure in our effort to redesign this framework? Because that itself is the broadest framework. That itself is the broadest framework that we need to be guided ultimately in our specific academic exercise. Yeah. So it must go back to this in one way or another, directly or indirectly, explicitly or implicitly. Yeah? So therefore, let us imagine that we are talking now about knowledge. I would qualify this by using the term that our previous or former rector of the International Islamic University, he has always differentiated. When we use knowledge, I think it is better to use human knowledge because we are talking about human knowledge. So if I have time, I would like to elaborate on this, but I think we are rushing. So let us talk about what is developed either by other people or by us. We call this human knowledge. So human knowledge has its foundation. has its foundation. Human knowledge has methodology, and human knowledge has subject matter. So in our case, we are talking about the subject matter is related to man and human and society and social realities and so on here. So maybe other subjects, biology, for example, natural science might have different, or of course they have different subject matter. So now this is where we are focusing now, man, society, human, whatever terms related to this. And it has also a methodology. When we say integrated, therefore, some of the features or peculiarities of integrated knowledge framework is that it should be holistic and organically coherent methodology, which this one is due to our foundation, due to the foundation of that particular knowledge. So now, so these are the two approaches in developing this. So when I say, for example, foundation of knowledge, and I put here Islamic worldview, the term that has been quite popularly used in contemporary scholarship, Islamic worldview, at-tasawwur al-Islami. Again, Islamic worldview also is approached in different ways, explained by different people in their own way. But my stress or my way of explaining this worldview is none other than, or part of worldview is that understanding some key concepts from the Islamic points of view, concept of God, concept of universe, concept of man, and concept of knowledge. Now, why I highlight this? Because different understanding about this will influence the way we look at other things. Now, for example, we want to study about society, right? Or about man. Now, if our theory of man, our understanding of man, our belief about man, let's say man has no creator, man evolved. Therefore, over time, they form society. Now we are studying society scientifically. So the knowledge that we generate does not take into account man as entity, man as being that is created. Therefore, there is no issue of referring to the source of knowledge that tell us that man is created. That is the Quran and Sunnah. So therefore, here, it has implication. It has implication on our dealing with the either even empirical research or whatever. So I will not talk about each every of this, but epistemology also, Islamic epistemology as well, as another component of foundation. For example, sources of knowledge. I highlight here sources of knowledge because when we talk about epistemology, we are talking about the nature of knowledge by looking at different aspects of them. What is knowledge, purpose of knowledge, sources of knowledge, and how knowledge is classified, and so on. Take, for example, sources of knowledge. Here, when we talk about consulting divine revelation as part of the effort, for example, yesterday, Dr. Roslina mentioned about the first category of reference that we need to also include is Quran and Sunnah, right? But if in our epistemology, we don't consider revelation to be one of the sources, then naturally it will not be included as part of the consideration in our knowledge construction or knowledge development. So what I'm trying to highlight here is that understanding the key concepts in Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology will influence also our knowledge activities and also understanding perspective on knowledge. So that much I want to highlight about this. So at the end of the day, when we talk about Islamic knowledge is not only the knowledge or sciences that have developed out of our dealing with the divine revelation. In fact, divine revelation is a primary source that tells us about the importance of consulting not only the divine revelation but also the universe. For lack of term, we are using the word universe to refer to whatever that exists other than God. I think that is for now tentatively, unless you can suggest any new term, but let us put on this. So therefore, if you look at this, there are three main components that are involved in development of human knowledge. Yeah. So I can put here number one, on the one hand, we as the learner, at the same time we are object of study, and subject of study and object of study, human, man, right? And we are part of universe. We are part of universe. And we are informed about ourselves, about universe. Some of this basic ideas about man, basic ideas about universe, they are told to us by revelation. By revelation. So therefore, revelation should be one of the important sources of knowledge from where we get knowledge of man and knowledge of universe. In addition to, of course, knowledge of the revelation itself and knowledge of God, the giver of revelation. So this is the interplay between the three major components that can give us some imagination about the structure of the framework, the framework that we need to consider. Maybe the very neat design of the framework might not be uniform from one person to another, but these are the major elements or components or essence of what we imagine to be framework. In other words, we cannot leave a revelation, for example, to be part of our knowledge generation or development. So when we look at these three, if we say that revelation is the major or primary source that gives us initial idea about universe, initial idea about man, an idea about God, idea about knowledge. So let us look at some examples here. Yeah, and all this is called ayat, ayat sunnah. So either this ayat, interestingly, we are talking about, when we talk about revelation, Al-Quran, the verses are ayat. Universe also, what we see has been described as ayat, the signs. Yeah, the signs. So the same word is used to refer to both the written and also the open here. That's why some scholars like Al-Marhum Taha Jabir Al-Awani use the word what you call this open book and also closed book. Closed book is revelation, open book is universe. And then we need to read both. Al-jam'u bayna qira'atain. That is combination of reading of both these in order to get that integrated sense of knowledge. This should guide us. So you see here the ayat that is used here, the ayat. Among the signs of Allah is that He creates samawat, heavens, and also our earth, and also the different alsina here mean literally what you call is a tongue. but it refers to languages and so on. And alwan is the colors. So when you look at human society, we are talking about human now. Human are of different races, of different languages. All this, from the perspective of Islam, all these are signs that Allah have given us the indications of the existence of God. So, to whom? Of course, everyone is experiencing the same thing. We'll see the same people with different colors. We see different people of different languages. But all this can only be reflected by this ayat is only for the knowledgeable. So that is why when we seek knowledge, so from Islamic perspective, the one who has knowledge, that is alim, al-alim or ulama, or alimin, all this becomes signs for them to reflect God, right? So same thing actually, like we see universe, we see days and night and so on, but days, night and then days. So all this we experience every day, Muslims and non-Muslims, thinkers and non-thinkers, but they don't become the object of reflection unless you are alim, alim in the Islamic sense. Otherwise, it just pass and then they come again and so on. So also, it has been mentioned in the Quran about ayat as well, that about our creation from turab, from soil, and then we become bashar, human. Again, the verse that points to the nature or to human, and this is what Allah has mentioned in the closed book, in the Revelation. So we have these ideas about human from Revelation, but the perspective here is that we relate this understanding, this knowledge to the Creator. We see the same what you call is phenomena. We see the same beings, but the way we see the beings is different. And so on. And then here again it points to the human. We are talking about human sciences. That is why I am bringing here some examples from the Quran talking about human. But all the same, all these verses point to the fact that our knowledge about this must be connected to ayatihi, that is Allah. This is the signs of Allah. The sign of the existence of Allah can be found in ourselves, can be found in universe, and so on. Now, you may find this to be what you call is, I do not know whether it is far away from what we are talking about, but I think you will find later on how we relate to this. Another element that is mentioned or another thing that is mentioned in the Quran is that the existence of not only ourselves, but also our partner. So sometimes we don't feel that the existence of partner is something that is meaningful and deeply rooted in our religion and so on. So only when we are men of thinking, we think about that, we reflect, we see, we ponder, we relate, and then we see our wife, for example, then we find, so there, the greatness of Allah. Allah has given me wife and rahmah and mawaddah and so on. So all this, in conclusion, whatever verses that you take from the Quran, you will find that the most important part is that knowledge is leading towards glorification and recognition of Allah as a master of the universe. So that is the point. So any knowledge, therefore, either natural science, social science, and so on, needs to be treated in this sense, in one way or another. So therefore, if you look at this, let me try to see now. It is 12:38. I hope I have time. I will just be quick on this. So when we are thinking about identifying or having a topic in social sciences within this Islamic integration of knowledge framework, then we must ask this question. First, is it a research topic? Because we can talk about the same thing, but it is not researchable. I think you have learned how to make a topic researchable. Second, is it a social science topic? So just now I was saying that very basic idea is that you must study something that is related to human or social realities. The third one, is it related to Islamic framework, right? So therefore, I think an area that I am going to give example is sociology. And the approach would have to take into account both the divine and the what you call this, the divine and the human. So when viewed from Islamic perspective, knowledge of society. Now I'm coming to sociology as one of the branches of social sciences. It's not fair for me to talk about other branches of knowledge of social sciences. It must be based on and inspired or guided by Islamic ideology, Islamic worldview, and Islamic epistemology in one way or another. That is number one. Number two, we must benefit from the various sources of knowledge available nowadays. So as far as today's sources of knowledge we can have with us when we want to study society, the most dominant one available now is modern sociology. We also have Islamic Turath, Islamic tradition, intellectual tradition, or a heritage. Other disciplines also can be benefited in order to give us knowledge of society, including economics, law, and so on. And research report, any research report, and also Quran and Sunnah. So therefore, there are all these sources must be consulted in order to be informed holistically and comprehensively about society. So if you want to understand society theoretically from Islamic framework, Islamic integrated framework, all these sources must be consulted, right? Of course, I don't here elaborate on how to do it for each of this, but I just give you some hints and example. For example, if that is the case, we have Quran and Sunnah with us, how then we are using that to guide us in dealing with modern sociology? Yeah. So how Quran can guide us in our effort to benefit from modern sociology? What can be taken, what cannot be taken, what need to be more critically analyzed, and so on. Same thing with, for example, when we deal with Muslim intellectual heritage in the form of the Islamic sciences that exist, guided by Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology, what can we say about the sciences and the knowledge and the issues that have been developed, for example, in the context of Islamic tradition and others. Yeah. So Al-Quran therefore become like what we call the filter and also the framework. Now, so therefore, the broad categories of themes that perhaps you can consider in order to identify your topic is, number one, the topics which are related to thought. I'm using this, maybe other terms might be more appropriate, but I am talking about philosophy, about the foundation, about the worldview, about epistemology. These are areas which are thought-based. But at the same time, in sociology, of course, as a science, therefore, it must also be related to the empirical study of social realities. Empirical study of social realities. So now, therefore, having said that, let us look at examples in the sociology and anthropology. SOCA stands for sociology and anthropology field. Possible areas to explore. If you are thinking of exploring some areas to be your research areas, to start with, of course, detail you have to work out with your supervisor to refine and make it more focused. Yeah. Now, let's say we take just now, there are 5 or 6 or more sources of knowledge which we can consult. Take, for example, modern sociology, because this is the most dominant discipline that students learn in order to know about society. Now, if we are equipped with that Islamic integrated of knowledge framework, then we need to use that in order to guide us in dealing with modern sociology. Not everything from modern sociology is what you call it, acceptable, but not everything, of course, most of the things are okay. So therefore, how can we say okay or not okay if we don't have some framework or filter to deal with that? But remember, our research is not only to find where is okay, where is not okay, but I think we are doing academic, empirical, as well as consideration of the worldview that we are subscribing to. So therefore, the word that I currently use is reorientation. So we approach modern sociology with reorientation mindset. So from there, we may be able to re-look into the meaning and definition, and also the other aspects of modern sociology with critical mind, guided by the framework that we are having. So let's say in modern sociology, there are many assumptions. Of course, I think here I don't want to detail it because this is not the area that I'm supposed to address for diverse audience. In modern sociology, they have their own assumptions. They have their own rukun, for example, arkan. They have their own beliefs. For example, about these beliefs can be explained in the form of some terms. So we have sociological perspective, we have sociological imagination, we have sociological investigation, where under sociological investigation, it is the scientific study of social reality. This involves theory and methods. And of course, when you look into these three major paradigms in sociological theories, structural functionalism, social conflict, and symbolic instructionism. So we need to look into this, and then guided by our broad framework, how can we relook or revisit all this in order to see how best the current theories to understand society can either be enhanced or improved or accepted, and so on. Yeah. So remember, reorientation is not only rejecting or modifying. Reorientation also involves accepting what is compliant with the Islamic framework. And of course, other standard topics in sociology, which I do not want to deal with that. So in maybe 13 minutes, I will go to the examples of themes related to the divine revelation. Now, since we are talking about comprehensiveness of our knowledge, you can explore areas which are either specific, quite specific for each of the source of knowledge, or the whole idea of that framework. So always possible. Or you can simply choose the topic as what normal sociologists done and excel in that. Just use empirical scientific study of certain social issue, and then just do it according to the scientific, the standard universal scientific approaches, and then it becomes what you call this contribution in knowledge, because it is useful knowledge. It is ilman nafi'ah. This is defined by the principle in Islam where any useful knowledge is quote unquote Islamic. Yeah, that's why sometimes we don't even need to mention about Islam or Islamic, because we know the underlying principle behind our effort fall within the what you call principle or Islamic principles, even without terms, without what you call this, without labels and so on. So let us look at some of the example. Of course, this is just to talk about the function of revelation. I think that is only to add to what we try to understand the functions of revelation. I quote here the view of Muhammad Abdul Rauf. He says that in summary, al-wahyu, revelation, came down to guide us in the following 5 areas, which are completely or almost completely beyond the reach of human mind. So remember that human mind has limitation. In certain areas, we cannot leave to human mind to find the answers. Remember, research is process of finding answers. That's why we have research questions. And the whole process is planned to get the answer. But the answers to this kind of questions cannot be through that. So revelation, among others, comes in order to provide that basic initial underlying assumptions, or here we cannot say assumptions anymore. Yeah? The word assumptions or presuppositions that have been mentioned, this we replace with convictions. Our convictions about God, our convictions about man, convictions about God. Because these areas, it is not something to be philosophized, because Quran provide that, yeah, for us to be to guide us further. So now I think this is just another verses from the Quran related to what you call this anas, humans, and so on. I think that one I want to escape, but the display of some of these verses are meant for particularly giving idea that there is a ground for us to do research in human reality and also social reality. So that is as far as research related to different sources of knowledge, either modern sciences or the Quran, and then Turas, for the Turas. Now, I mentioned just now, perhaps you have to explore whether you want to do research in the area that is related to thought or to empirical study of society. So thought-based research areas, perhaps, this is perhaps, you may want to, this is areas, and I'm not saying topics, though topics can be developed within this area. Of course, you have to consult literature in order to know to what extent some research related to the first area has been done and so on. For example, given what I have mentioned, perhaps it is reasonable to do research to revisit conventional sociological and anthropological paradigms in the light of Islamic epistemology. So we equip ourselves with Islamic epistemology, Islamic worldview. So with this, then we try to relook into the current conventional sociological and anthropological paradigms, as I mentioned. That could be one broad area. Within that, you have to search in the literature which one is not yet done to find the gap. And then I mentioned about reorientation of modern sociology and anthropology, either at the level of foundation or at the level of methodology or at the level of other topics within that. And then, yes, foundation. Then maybe also your research would like to focus further on relating concept of integrated knowledge as it applies to sociology, because not much has been done as well. I mean, there are scattered works, but maybe to develop something that is clear enough for application, that could be one area. I think recently IIIT has what you call it, offered grants for people to, for example, to conduct research on maqasid and how it applies to different areas. I think that could be falling within this. And then the role of ideology and construction of epistemology, the case of Islam. That one, many researchers. Now, I'll give you here one example that this is the example of topic, because this is my current PhD student is doing on this. We are in the sociology, but at the same time, we have Torah behind us. We want to dig further into the Torah. Yeah. So we focus on what are the ideas, the thoughts, the views, and also the what you call it? Yeah, the thoughts of early Muslim scholars, which can be inferred and derived and interpreted as being contributing to sociology of religion. So we name it as early Muslim scholarship in sociology of religion and analysis of Shahristani's Kitab Al-Milal wa Nihal. So this is more specific, and then my student has done research or literature review on this in order to refine further. This is the tentative topic that we have. Of course, as has been said, topic may start with something that we think specific right now, but as we are doing research and also more literature review, we may refine it to be more focused. Yeah. So this is as far as example of the topic in regarding Torah thought. Yeah. And then topics for empirical research. In sociology, sociology is defined as scientific study of society, but I prefer to redefine it as systematic study of society. Because when we say systematic study of society, not to say that the scientific empirical part is ignored. No, that must be the main one. But it allows also other possibilities of approaching certain topic by including also other ways, particularly with the inclusion of revelation as the primary source. That could enhance and broaden our understanding of social realities or society. So when we talk about social reality, the reality in society, there are many levels. International level, ummah level, national level, and so on. And within Islamic, within the field of sociology, we have what we call social institutions, family, education, health, and so on. Maybe under health, the most popular one now is COVID-19. And I think Dr. Roslina as also yesterday was illustrating the literature review by taking that example. Now, so these are the possible areas that I perhaps, of course, this is subjected to what you call this, further refinement and so on, and dictated by also your literature review. But broadly speaking, this is the guide that might have. So an example of this that I have done, of course, not PhD or master's research, but I have also, for example, when we talk about OIC, we are concerned about the ummah nowadays at the international level. So I have written also one work that is Development and Modernization of OIC member countries, a study based on selected indicators. This is based on the grant that we got. So here, I think Muslims need to be given big picture as well. That is the idea. Because where are they, particularly in several areas? Literacy rate, for example, this is the world average, but Muslim or OIC one is this. This is world, and this is OIC score. Of course, this the years that I have chosen. And same thing also, we have to look at the broader picture as well, whereby where are we in terms of our contribution to the export of technological, what you call this, in terms of technology, high technology exports. You see here, of course, it is defined here. I do not want to go in depth here. We look at one country, take for example China, in terms of exporting technology or high technology, what you call these products. China contributed, this is of course in year 2007, you can take other years or you can make comparison. 19% here, China alone. But OIC countries, this is OIC country, how many? 57 out of 100, 93 or 95 countries. So OIC countries only contributed in terms of high technology export 4% here. This is 57. Now, I think if we look at the bigger picture where Muslim Ummah is in several areas, that hopefully can trigger their awareness that there are bigger issues to be concerned by Muslim rather than either local or very petty issues. That is the idea. So you can choose as a topic or areas which requires Muslims to think. Of course, we are facing so many problems, but there are bigger problems. So maybe the purpose of your research is to come up with a bigger picture for Muslims to understand. Therefore, they can see what they are facing in the country or whatever is too small to be compared to the this. So I think that is all for now. I think it is already 1 now. I hope I fulfill the objective that have been set. If not, then I have to. I certainly would like to seek your indulgence to forgive me, and hopefully, whatever little thing I give, hopefully is having some. Is to be blessed by God. What is good from Allah and what is deficient comes from me. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi.